Welcome back to Literature Guide. Today's video is about medieval or chivalric romances written during the Middle Ages. I have covered the three major romances of the Middle Ages. They are King Horn, Guy of Warwick and Bevis of Hampton. I have tried to give detailed information about the three romances in this particular video. I have already produced a video on Anglo-Saxon poetry and Anglo-Norman poetry. This particular video contains information about the medieval or chivalric romances. I don't want to waste your time. Let's dive into the video and find out whether it is of any value for you or not. But before I leave the camera, I would like to tell you that if you really like my videos and if you really find the videos valuable or important, do like and subscribe Literature Guide so that I can produce many videos like this one for you. Let's dive into the video and enjoy the video.
Medieval or chivalric romance. Roughly speaking, the term romance presents a tale of adventure, quest, brave deeds, religious faith, chivalry and romance in verse or prose. It also contains the elements of magic, spells, and the role of supernatural. The term romance refers to a work of art written in French language sprung out of Latin dialect. The medieval romance has idealized characters and set in distant and remote places. The reader can observe difference between the medieval romance and epic. The epic deals with heroism whereas the medieval romance deals with courtly love. The medieval romance primarily presents the life story of kings, queens, prince and princess, noblemen, and feudal knights. It has nothing to do with ordinary people. The medieval romance also shares some features of chanson de geste, which means song of deeds, which was in vogue between 11th and 14th century. The narrative of the medieval romance closely associated with the four cycles. The first group called the Matter of Rome. It presents stories of classical legends and myths, of Alexander the Great, and the heroes of the Trojan Wars and Thebes. The second cycle presents the Matter of France, which deals with stories of Charlemagne and his knights. The third cycle, called the Matter of Britain, comprised stories of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. Many stories were added to Geoffrey of Monmouth's prose work Historia Regum Britanniae. The French poet Wacine Roman de Brute introduced the Round Table. Lorman based his poem Le Brute on Wace's French translation called Roman de Brute. In the poem, Le Brute, Lorman has sung of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table for the first time in English literature. There is a fine blending of alliterative lines and rhymed couplets of unequal length. There is also artistic use of similes in the poem. In Le Brute, there is pictorial description of a life of Saxon warrior, battles, wildlife, and life in the forests and fields rather than the chivalry and romance of the Norman court. Lorman introduced the story of passing of King Arthur by boat. The French poet Christian de Troyes in Lancelot added an episode of romance between Queen Guinevere and Sir Lancelot. He also expanded the story of Sir Percival and the quest for the Holy Grail in his poem Percival. Thus the narrative regarding the Matter of Britain developed gradually with the passage of time. The fourth cycle deals with the matter of England, which presents exploits of the heroes such as King Horn, Guy of Warwick, and Beavis of Hampton. King Horn is a famous and important medieval romance comprising 1,545 lines. The story of King Horn is the oldest one, and its roots can be traced back to the turbulent times of the Danish invasion. Horn is a son of King Murray and Queen Godhild of Sardine. Horn has 12 companions, but he is more intimate to two whom he loved more than the rest. They are Athelf and Fikenhild. One day, the king sees 15 ships of Saracens in his territory. In the combat, King Murray and his soldiers are slain. The enemy destroys the churches and kills people ruthlessly. Queen Godhild takes refuge in a cave where she continues to observe Christian rites and prayers. Horn and his companions are cast adrift in a boat. They meet King Aylmer. King Aylmer appoints Ethelbrus as Horn's tutor. Horn learns hunting, fishing, playing the harp and serving the cup. The king's daughter, Rhymenhild, falls in love with Horn. Ethelbrus arranges a clandestine meeting between Horn and Rhymenhild. She proposes Horn, but Horn refuses her proposal due to his low status. On hearing Horn's decision, Rhymenhild faints away. Horn carries her in his strong arms and caresses her. He promises Rhymenhild to marry her if she helps him to become a knight. King Aylmer declares knighthood of Horn and his companions. Horn thinks that he must win honor and deserve Rhymenhild by heroic deeds. Horn is betrayed by his intimate friend, Fikenhild, who tells the king that Horn is plotting to kill the king. In the end, Horn seeks help from King Thurston to carry out his plan. He reaches the castle of Fikenhild, who has confined Rhymenhild in his castle. Horn appears in the castle in the garb of a pilgrim and meets Rhymenhild. He reveals his identity to her. The treachery of Fikenhild is exposed. Horn kills Fikenhild in the end. Horn wishes to conquer his kingdom and avenge his father's death before he marries Rhymenhild. Horn wins over his enemies and gets his kingdom back. In the end, Horn finds his mother safe and alive. He now takes Rhymenhild to be his queen. Another important popular verse romance of the Anglo-Norman literature is Guy of Warwick. The Guy of Warwick contains 1,300 lines. It is divided into 3 parts dealing with the love story of Guy of Warwick and Felice, a daughter of Rohand, Earl of Warwick. There is fine description of Felice's beauty and intelligence. She has mastered 7 arts. Many dukes and earls cherish a dream to marry Felice, but all their efforts go in vain. Guy is a son of Siward, a faithful steward of Rohand, Earl of Warwick. He is a promising and handsome young man. Guy is best at woodcraft, he is well taught and courteous. The Earl of Warwick arranges a feast and Guy is sent to wait on Felice. When he meets Felice, he falls in love with her. After much hesitation and torment of a lover, he reveals his thoughts of love to Felice. But Felice refuses his proposal and asks Guy not to see her again. The time comes when Guy proposes Felice for the 2nd time, and faints at her feet. Felice agrees to marry him if he becomes a knight and proves his valor. The Earl of Warwick confers knighthood to Guy, but he has yet to prove his valor, which is one of the conditions of Felice. The story moves on rapidly as Guy wins fame and honor by winning in many regions. Guy goes on a journey and visits Spain, Normandy, Lombardy, and Germany. Guy earns much love and honor for him. Owing to the machinations of his rival, Duke of Autun, Guy's name and honor is stained. Autun tries to defame Guy. Autun slays many of Guy's noble companions. Guy also receives severe wounds in a fight with Autun. But he is restored to health. The poem abounds in adventures of Guy. Guy also fights for the Greek and the Turks to vanquish Sudan, the leader of the Saracens. There are many beautiful and pictorial descriptions of battles, sieges and tournaments in the poem. After defeating the Saracens, Guy slays a dragon in order to help a lion. The poem makes the reader recall killing of Grendel and his mother along with a dragon and Beowulf. Guy also rescues the emperor's daughter in Germany. It leaves a lasting impression on the emperor and he decides to marry his daughter to Guy. But fate plays a vital role. Guy remembers Felice. He manages to persuade the Emperor of Germany and starts on his journey to homeland. He reaches the shores of England, staying with King Athelstan some time. The news of the dragon in the region disturbs the king. Guy is still there. He resolves to fight and kill the dragon, which is 30 feet long. The dragon has come over to England from Ireland. Guy attacks the dragon with his sword, but it could not affect the dragon. After a terrible fight, Guy manages to kill the dragon. He cuts the head off the dragon and the head of the dragon is carried to King Athelstan. This episode reminds the reader of the killing of Grendel and his mother and the slaying of the dragon by Beowulf in the concluding part of the poem. Guy finally reaches to Warwick. The marriage of Guy and Felice is accomplished. There is feasting and rejoicing in Warwick for 15 days. One fine night, Guy is standing on a turret reflecting over his life. He thinks that God has given him everything, but he has done nothing for God in return. So, Guy decides to spend the rest of his life in an ascetic way. He resolves to go on a pilgrimage. But Felice thinks differently. She thinks that Guy can atone for his sins at home also. He can do so by building and founding churches and abbeys, and offering alms to the poor. But her suggestions have no effect upon Guy. He gives his ring and sword to Felice, and he instructs his friend Hugo regarding the education of his son and leaves Warwick. But after some time Guy has come back when he hears the news of stealing of his son, Rainbron. Guy arrives in Warwick and lives there as a pilgrim. He also receives alms from Felice. Guy does not like to disturb his wife by revealing his identity and distract her from the pious way of life. When Guy is on the verge of dying, he sends a ring by a messenger to Felice. He urges her to come. When Felice comes and meets Guy, he gives her directions about his burial. She receives Guy's last words and follows his direction after Guy's death. But Felice survives Guy on for 15 days, and she was buried in the same grave with her love. Beavis of Hampton is a fine 14th-century medieval romance which abounds with love, adventures, deceit, murder, loyalty, and sacrifice. Guy, Earl of Southampton, marries the daughter of the King of Scotland. She is already in love with the emperor called Almain. She has married only to make her father happy. In the course of time, she has a son called Bevis. After Bevis's birth, the lady is not happy and decides to get rid of this mess. She plans to murder Guy, Earl of Southampton, her husband, and marry her lover, Almain. She sends a message to the emperor and reveals her plan to him. She asks him to visit England on 1st of May and enter the forest in the vicinity of the sea, and kill her husband. The messenger comes with a message for the Emperor Almain. The Emperor has promised her to kill Guy, Earl of Southampton. On the 1st of May, Lady Guy puts an appearance of illness and asks Sir Guy to get a wild boar in the forest. Sir Guy wants to fulfill his wife's wish and so goes to the forest. In the forest Sir Guy meets his rival who is already waiting for him. The Emperor of Almain is accompanied with his soldiers. Almain kills Sir Guy in the forest and sends Sir Guy's head to Lady Guy. Bevis comes to know about his mother's treachery, and he grieves at the death of his father. Lady Guy now plans to kill Bevis. She orders her foster father Sabre to kill Bevis. Sabre feels pity for Bevis and he dresses Bevis as a shepherd. He tells Lady Guy that he has accomplished the deed. Bevis looks after sheep out in the fields. While grazing the sheep, he hears a sound in the vicinity. The noise of rejoicing is coming from a hall. Bevis likes to go there at the hall. So he reaches the hall, asks admission in the hall. When Bevis is refused to enter the hall, he strikes the emperor with his staff and escapes. Lady Guy sells Bevis as a slave to the merchant who is going to Armenia. In Armenia, Bevis acquires position and fame. He becomes the king's chamberlain. Bevis's strong personality and his noble deeds leaves impression upon the princess called Joshan. She falls in love with Bevis. She gifts Bevis a magical sword, named Morgalai, and a swift horse called Arundel. But Bevis has to leave Armenia due to the machinations of the courtiers. Saber, in the meantime, sends his son, Terry, in search of Bevis. After an inquiry about Bevis, Terry comes to know that Bevis has been hanged by the Saracens. Bevis starts on his journey. He is relieved from the pain of adder's bite by an angel. Bevis offers prayers to God in return. Bevis escapes from Damascus. He hears news of Joshan's marriage by a knight. So, he goes back to Joshan and meets her in the garb of a palmer. Joshan inquires about Bevis. The palmer tells her that he knows Sir Bevis and is his friend. He further adds that Sir Bevis has sent him in search of Arundel. She takes the palmer to the stable. When the palmer reaches at the door of the stable, Arundel breaks his chains and ran to stable door. Joshan comes to know that the palmer is Sir Bevis. She likes to leave her country with Sir Bevis with her confidant chamberlain called Escaped. The three start their journey to Cologne, in Germany. The Bishop of Cologne is uncle to Sir Bevis. He asks his uncle for help to avenge his father's death. The bishop gives 100 knights to Sir Bevis. Sir Bevis starts his journey to England, leaving Joshan and Escaped. He reaches the shores of Southampton. In the course of the story, Earl Mile determines to marry Joshan. For that he deceives Escaped with a forger's letter. Joshan comes to know about the impending danger, but she manages to tackle the problem on her own. She handles the menace of Mile by hanging him to the roof beam with her girdle. When the barons comes to know about the issue, Joshan informs them that Sir Mile wrongfully tried to marry her, so she deceived him at night by hanging Sir Mile in return. The barons and the courtiers gives order of Joshan's death by burning at the stake. Sir Bevis and Escaped reach at sight in time. They saved Joshan from the stake. Sir Bevis, Joshan and Escaped return to Southampton. Sir Bevis avenges his father's death but not without fighting. The medieval romance Bevis of Hampton abounds in many episodes of adventures. The poem moves further with an episode of the death of King Eadgar's son who tried to steal Arundel and got killed by receiving a kick by Arundel. King Eadgar resolves to avenge his son's death. He expelled Sir Bevis and Joshan from the country. When Sir Bevis returned with Joshan and his 2 sons, there was great battle. In the war, 6,000 soldiers were killed. After the battle, Sir Bevis and his family reached their camp at Putney. King Eadgar understood his mistake and resolved to marry his daughter to Sir Bevis's son, Mile. Later on, Sir Bevis, Joshan, and his younger son returned to Erminy. After a few days, Joshan dies of illness soon after Mile's marriage. Arundel also found dead in the stable. Sir Bevis survives his wife for a few minutes and dies. At St. Lawrence Church, their remains are buried. Thus, the poem Bevis of Hampton touches the heart of every reader.
How is the video? I hope you liked the video. I have already produced videos on Anglo-Saxon poetry, Anglo-Norman poetry, and a video on the oldest epic, Beowulf. You can watch all these videos by visiting my channel. If you really find my videos valuable or important, do like and subscribe Literature Guide. I will meet you soon with a new video on an interesting topic meet you.
Please subscribe Literature Guide.